twisting through 7 suns of gold, and the gypsy was insisting that his story
So we
must
are
be
welcoming
told.
a very special guest to the show today, Alysse Bryson. Welcome, Alysse.
Hello, good morning or
And
afternoon, wherever you are.
yeah, we have a global audience, so that's correct. Could be evening, could be I hear people tell me, some people have told me that they listen to this as they're falling asleep. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, if it makes them
Oh,
go to sleep.
interesting.
So, Alysse is known as the sober curator. You know, I'm not even going to try and explain that. Why don't you explain what that is?
Oh man, what is that today? That's a really good question. The Sober Curator is a lifestyle resource website hub that I created 2 years ago now. Found myself, like many people, with a little extra time during the pandemic. And as a person in long term recovery, that has a very expansive media background, I was looking for a magazine or a resource that would tell me where all the great recovery podcasts and books and merchandise and people and stories, kind of where could I find like all of that? And there are several sober magazines, if you will, or resource sections out there, but a lot of them are very focused on early recovery, which is great. Like, I wish that those things had been available when I got sober way back in the day. It's so exciting to see all of the content that's come online around recovery over the duration of my 16 plus years doing this thing, one day at a time. But I couldn't find one that spoke to me as a person in long term recovery. So then when the pandemic happened, I was like, well, maybe I'm just crazy enough to create it myself. And so with a friend and my sister, and then it grew to be, I think there's almost 30 of us now, sober curators in predominantly the United States, but we've got two in Canada and one in Australia and one in Mexico. We're just trying to create this ultimate resource hub. So if you want to check out the latest TV shows or movies that have addiction and mental illness as an underlining storyline, or there's so many podcasts now, and you want to know what all the options are, so you don't miss a good one. Like, we're just trying to like curate as much content into one place so it can be just a really helpful resource to anyone that's looking for that kind of content.
I love all of that. And you're right, there's a few kind of sober magazines. There was The Fix.
Yep,
I'm
the
trying to think
Fix,
of
which
this
went
kind of,
which closed down a couple months ago.
yeah.
There's Recovery Today magazine.
Yeah.
There's the Tempest, the Temper. They've changed their name a few times. There are things out there for sure. I just wasn't finding
Yeah.
one that spoke to me. And I'm a
Yeah.
kid of the '80s and a
Yeah.
lover of the '90s,
Yeah.
and pop culture's my
Yeah.
jam, right? So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I just want to know all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to be
Yeah.
like, where's the cool merchandise? I was just so
Yeah.
excited when I saw that people were creating merchandise that wasn't ugly or tacky, that I was just so excited. I was like, we got to tell everybody about this. So yeah, so we're
Yeah.
just doing the best we can. We're not even a nonprofit. We're just a small group of people that really love content, creating content, searching out content, and organizing it into one place. So that's what we're up to.
I know, and that's why I like the vibe. I'm also a child of the 80s and 90s. That's when my drinking took place, and yeah, I love the vibe of it. It's I don't want to say it's kind of, it's got a lightness to it. It's not like I mean, there's some serious content, but there's also, it's quite fun as well, and that's what I really like about it, because my whole
Thank you
mission
for
is
noticing that.
this
Yeah.
is we are having more fun than you are, right? It's like, it's not
So
all
much fun.
like, oh god, we're rock bottom, right?
Yeah. And I think that was my other thing is over the years, people were like, oh, you're sober. Like, what do you do? And it's like, I'm not boring. Like, I'm the opposite of I was
Oh,
boring when I was drunk. That's when I was boring, you
oh my
know?
God. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just trying to show people that a sober lifestyle can be wildly rewarding and fun. And yeah, it doesn't come without hard
Mm.
things. It doesn't come out without some tears and this and that. But at the end of the day, the reason I got sober is to be happy, joyous, and free and live my life to the fullest and to have fun and to laugh, you know. So that's really what we're trying to infuse. So I'm glad that you picked up on the fun vibes.
Yeah, that's why I was attracted to it. And when I met you, why I really liked you is I'm the same. Like I'm like, don't I mean, I got sober in my 20s and had people kind of look on me with pity that, I was like this poor sober person. And I'm kind of like, F you. Don't look at me and think I'm not like I'm having more fun than you are. Trust me. And also
Hmm.
I don't have a cost. Like so
Right?
there's no cost. Like, I
It's
mean,
yeah,
this is like this is what we want to stand on its head.
mhm, mhm, and it's not a cost, like, I can't tell you how many as a single woman in recovery, I can't tell you how many times I've been on dates and the guys will find out that I don't drink, and they're like, "Oh, wow, you're a cheap date," and I'm like, "No, actually, I'm not, I have expensive taste, I like nice things, I'm just not gonna have you wasting your money on alcohol, like, but you could definitely spend it on other things, experiences and whatnot, so yeah, we're not boring. We're super fun, and in fact, I just changed jobs, but at the last place I was for nearly 6 years, one of my secondary titles around the office was director of fun because like I work hard and I want to play hard, like that's just what I
Yeah,
want to do.
yeah. So can we go back? Can you tell us a little bit about your drinking story and kind of how you ended up where you are now? What give us a little kind of overview of what your
Yeah,
drinking
just
was like
kind of
and
the
what got you into
highlights.
sobriety.
Or the lowlights, if you want to call it. I grew up in a great household, middle class family. Both my grandfathers were pastors, so I spent a lot of time at churches, either because of school or Sunday school or Wednesday night meetings, and then I was going to a private Christian school. So when I entered high school and got pushed out into the public school system, I was like, "Whoa, there's a lot of things happening out here." And strangely enough, all the cool kids, if you will, they were the party kids. And I desperately wanted to be one of the cool kids. And so my drinking career took off at right around 16. And right from the get-go, I knew I was drinking differently than my friends. I was blacking out very, very, very early on and didn't quite understand what that was. I just kind of thought I had a bad memory. Um, and I spent most of my 20s just kind of micromanaging and compartmentalizing my substance and alcohol use. And I became a young single mother at the age of 20. My son is now 26. But eventually I would run out of money and my parents would have to pay my rent, or I would get in a scrape, or I mean there were just a lot of things that would happen. And I had to keep changing groups of people because I would things that I would do and say when I was using were not always attractive. I was a lot of fun until I wasn't. And where I ended up was
Mm.
moving from my small town to Seattle around the age of 30, thinking if I moved and my career was kind of accelerating, that I would magically everything would get better. But wherever you go, there you are, right? And so I found myself 30, single
Hmm.
mom in Seattle, career gal, and I was so broken, and I had consequences, of course, but from the outsider looking in, my consequences didn't seem that bad. And I had a place to live, I had a car, I had a job, but I just kind of knew I was on the brink of losing it all. And so a series of things happened, and I just hit this breaking point where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I sought therapy, and I looked at inpatient options, and I just couldn't figure out how to make that work as a single mom with my schedule. So I did an outpatient program that was very immersive. It just kind of everything changed right around that 30-year mark. And so now I've been sober for I just recently celebrated my 16th sober anniversary. And my life is just wildly rewarding and different and fun and crazy and unpredictable. And if you had told the Alysse that was like 30 days sober, if you just do a few of these basic things consistently, your life is going to look like this, I would have never dreamed. I would have never dreamed that my career would take off in the ways that it took off, and that I would have the people in my life and the things that I have, and the trips that I've taken. I wouldn't have dreamt big enough for myself. And so and people ask me now, like, are you really just not going to drink for the rest of your life? And it's like, you know, I I don't know what the future holds, but it didn't serve me 15, 16, 20 years ago. I don't know why it would serve me now. And I quite enjoy my classy problems. They're very classy now compared to what they used to be. So,
Thank you for saying the magic words there. That you said you had no idea if you did these few simple things consistently, your
yeah.
life could be like this. Because that's
Yeah.
something I talk about in my coaching groups all the time. That the secret sauce is consistency. That's the
Yeah.
deal. Can you talk
Mhm.
a little bit more about that? What things do you do consistently that has given you this amazing life?
I am definitely a one day at a time girl. I have to really just keep it that simple. Because if I had set off to be like, I'm not gonna drink for a year, I would have been drunk within 2 weeks. Like I don't naturally have a lot of discipline. But things that work for me, is I do start my day with prayer and meditation. It's not perfect. I wish I could tell you that I went out and sat under a beautiful tree on my yoga mat and, like, was super zen this morning. No, it was a lot more chaotic than that. It was just a few minutes of being still and just asking my higher power to come into my day and show me what the right things are to do. I do a lot of therapy and journaling. I love art therapy. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I enjoy playing in a creative space. I enjoy creating. Again, doesn't mean I'm good at it. It's just something that I enjoy. I love being of service to other people. So that is probably the thing that I do the most consistently, excuse me, that it just it growing up as a kid, my dad always told me, like, when I was having a pity party or something wasn't going my way, he's like, go help somebody else. And if you're still upset about this, that, or the other thing, we'll talk about it when you're done helping somebody else. And he was right. You can't, it's really hard to feel sorry for yourself and be helpful to somebody else at the same time. And so, being a person of
Mm,
service is now a huge part of who I am. I sit on several different boards of different nonprofit organizations. I spend a lot of time mentoring other women that are in early recovery, just try to be their tour guide and help them, see their blind spots. Um, I I practice gratitude, and really focusing that I have everything that I need, and not always, craving to be like the Joneses. But it hasn't come without bumps and challenges. Recovery hasn't been rainbows and butterflies. I had emergency heart surgery at the age of 40, and 10 years sober. That was incredibly scary,
wow.
and when you're being rolled into emergency heart surgery, there's some perspective that happens there. I very clearly remember being rolled down the hallway and staring at the ceiling like, am I coming out of this alive? Is this it? Is this the end? And in the same week, my son, who was at the time 18, 19, was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is a lifelong disease that, there's still no cure for it. And um it is an autoimmune disease, that makes it that you really need to be aware of where the bathrooms are at all times. It's not a fun disease, right? It's not fun. And that's been really hard to be the parent. Like, if I could take that for him, I would, but I can't. I've battled cancer in recovery. I've lost loved ones in recovery. So, life has still come at me full bore. Um, but I've just been, I've just done enough consistently, not perfectly, to just
Yeah.
for today, I'm really blessed by the network of people that have come around me to support me in all different walks, whether it's professionally or personally. And it does really take a village, right? And you don't have to do it by yourself. That was a lesson I needed to learn.
Yes. Again, you said the magic words. This is exactly what I say to my clients. It's the consistently, and we do it messily. We don't do it perfectly,
Yeah.
and nobody does. I don't know anybody, right? It's kind of in the mess is where the growth is.
Absolutely. I mean, that is, break down, break through, the
Mm-hmm.
rainbow always comes after the storm, the lightness always comes after the dawn, the dark. That is my
Mm,
experience. And unfortunately, pain is a motivator, right? And so sometimes I have to get into a bit of pain in
mm,
order to
mm,
take action. But the good news is the longer I do this consistently,
mm-hmm.
I'm kind of becoming a wimp. So I get into a pain a lot faster now. Like the things that I used to be able to tolerate and the drama and all of that, like I don't have an appetite for
Mm,
it like I did
mm,
before,
mm,
because my pain tolerance has gotten so much
mm,
lower. Like I'm
mm.
just not willing to put up with all that unnecessary nonsense.
Yeah, so true. And the other thing you said as well is that it sounds like you have a sober community. That's
Hmm.
also another crucial part. Is the sober it is helping others and being part of a sober community. And I just want to differentiate the helping others. Um, my work is not helping others. That's my work. That's my
Hmm.
profession that I've trained and qualified to do. It's helping others where there's no financial relationship. It's consistently doing that. And
Yep.
because I have definitely gone made that mistake and seen other people make that mistake. When you work in the field, it's like, oh, I'm helping others. No, if it's your job. It's completely
Right.
different to doing it as service, spiritual service.
Yeah, there's a difference between getting paid to do something versus doing something for fun and for free, right? I mean, there's just a
Yeah.
difference. Doesn't mean you can't bring
Yeah.
integrity to both, but it's just different.
Yeah. Can I ask you, I mean, that's you've been through a lot there. I mean, being a single mom so young, what was that like parenting and then getting sober with a kid?
Ugh. My son was 9 when I got sober. And I wish I could tell you that he doesn't have any memories of his mom, being a fall down drunk. But
Mm,
that's not the truth. Now, I did hide, a lot of the ugly stuff I was able to hide somewhat successfully, but that's only because I was more of an absent parent, meaning I, if I was going to go out and party for the weekend, I would drop him off at my parents, and so I just wouldn't be around. So
mm,
he didn't see as much of the yuck, but that's because I pushed him off on other people, right? Or I was
mm,
sleeping things off. So he remembers me sleeping a lot. Um,
mm,
but when I got sober, I was really open with it from the get go, and talked to him about it
mm,
openly and honestly. But also understanding the age that he was at. Like the conversations I had with him when he was 10, look very different than the conversations I have with him today, right? And
mm,
it's learning to show up for him. I have this very painful memory of he was probably 15 or 16. So I was what, 5, 6, 7 years sober at that point. He was in high school and he was in choir, and I had gone to watch one of his performances. And at this point, I was running a really fancy lifestyle magazine in Seattle. I had become a full-blown workaholic. I mean, my thumbs were
mm.
cramping because I was on my phone all the time, and social
Yeah.
media, I was obsessed with it. And I remember and I was the only one there at the concert. His dad, who knows where he was. He didn't show up a lot to those kinds of things. And my parents would when they could, but they lived further away. And so usually it was just me. And we were driving home and he was like, "Hey mom, how did I do? You know, how was my performance?" And I was like, "Oh, you were great. I loved it. I'm so proud of you." And really quietly, he's like, I don't know if that's true because I could see you from the stage and you were on your phone the whole time." And
Mm.
that was just a
Mm.
dagger to the heart, right? Can you imagine how he must
Mm.
have felt? As you know, he only has one parent showing up to begin with, and the one that does show up isn't even paying any attention, is just like obsessed with her phone. And
Mm.
I wish I could say that after that night, like I never looked at my phone again. But that's not my truth, you know. It took me a really long time to get my priorities right. Because just putting down the alcohol and the drugs, that didn't actually fix or change anything. I was still the same person making the same yucky decisions. I just was making them sober, you know? And so I had to really learn to be present and to learn what it was to really show up for someone. And when I actually finally made my amends to him and owned my side of the street and in all the ways that I had perceived failure as a mom, it wasn't just an apology to clear my conscience. It was, and here's how I'm going to show up for you going forward. I'm going to be present in our relationship and supportive, which means when I'm at any of his activities, if I have the temptation of my phone, I guess I just can't have my phone with me, right? Like, so that I could learn to be there for him. And so it's a lot of trial and error, and parenting is hard. Parenting is hard. Single
Oh,
parenting, woof, it is the
yeah.
worst. Like it is really really hard because it's just you all the time. There's not somebody else to take out the recycling, you know, there's not somebody else to do the groceries. Like it's
Mm.
just you all the time. And I can't speak for everyone in recovery, but most people that I have encountered with that are in recovery are, you know, we care a lot what other people think. We're people pleasers. We'll go out of our way to, you know, help everybody around us, but often that comes at a sacrificing of boundaries for ourself. And that took me a
Mm.
really long time, and I'm still don't do it perfectly, but I definitely
Mm.
am showing up a lot differently now than how I showed up even at 10 years sober.
Mm. Um, Single parents are superheroes. It is parenting is
Superheroes.
the hardest thing I've ever, yeah, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, and it's almost broken me. And I had 10 years of sobriety under my belt, and I was 38 years old when I became a parent. So I was, I was mature, and I've still made a lot of mistakes and done a lot of things that I regret that I could wish I could go back and change. But I was raised by a single parent. I know what it's like. It's hard, and you were so young. I mean, 20. I was 30. I was 18 years older than you. I mean, there is a massive difference between 20 and 38. And I mean, he must be really proud of you now.
You know, when I look back at pictures, I was quite, you know, I had them before social media and the internet. So I had all these scrapbooks, and I look back and I was like, oh my gosh, I was a baby having a baby. Like I was just, I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't even a full grown, you know, it's amazing that we made it through. And he actually, we live together now. I just bought my first house and we just moved in, and we've had a lot of fun decorating it and making decisions together. And he's got you know, he's finally on a career path that he's really excited about. And his Crohn's is in remission, and we just have a really honest conversation um and relationship on the daily about how we want to show up in each other's life, but also give each other space. And you know, but the benefit of being a really young mom is, man, we had everything in common, you know? Like, I wanted to go to Disneyland. I wanted to go watch the superhero movies, you know? I wanted to play with Legos and play video games. Like, we liked all the same things. So, you know, we have had a lot of fun together, but it hasn't been easy. And yeah, I wouldn't my sister and my nephew and my son are exactly 21 years apart in age. Um, and so my nephew is 4 now, and my sister is married, and she talks about how hard it is, and I'm like, yeah, sis, think about doing all that by yourself, and
Yeah,
because
yeah.
parenting's hard. It's hard. It's just hard.
I'm really interested in being all that you've gone through. How did you talk to your son about alcohol and drugs when he became a teenager? And you said right from the word go you were very honest with him. So how did you have that discussion with him when he was kind of getting to those ages? And was
Well,
that
I
scary
asked,
for
yeah,
you?
it was. I asked, I started with asking questions of like, what do you remember? What did you see going on? Let me start with there because
Mm,
like I wanted to know where are we starting with, right?
mm,
What's the gauge on this? And he had a memory that he thought that I made him drink at the age of 4 or 5, and I was like, I don't I don't remember it going down that way. And as we talked about that memory that he had, what the actual memory was is he kept wanting my drink. And I kept saying, "You're not going to like the way that it tastes." And he kept saying, well, I want to, you seem to like it. I want to try it. So I was like, go ahead, try it. Like, take a drink. You're not going to like it. Um, but in his memory, it was, I made him a cocktail at the age of 5. And I was like, that's, but again, say we were both there, but very different perceptions on what happened. And that doesn't mean that my memory is perfect, but I'm fairly confident I never made my 5-year-old a cocktail. And as far as, when he was a teenager, I just talked a lot about consequences, and there are so many more consequences now than there were when I was a kid. Like I remember getting pulled over for drinking and driving at the age of 16 or 17 in the small town that I grew up in, and the police officer was like, "All right, well, I'm going to follow you home." That would never happen now, right? So consequences, and so I was like, the decisions you make are going to stay with you for who knows how long. Same with whatever you put on the internet, like it's going to be out there, and so
mm,
and his,
mm,
I got sober, but his dad has never been sober, and it's not for me to say if he does or doesn't need to, but I would definitely argue if there were periods of his life where he absolutely would have benefited from abstinence or at least cutting back. And so I would talk to my son like, you're upset because your dad doesn't communicate with you or doesn't show up for this or that. Why do you think that is? Well, he's not able to be present in his life in many ways because drugs and alcohol are what leads his life. And so, but I didn't ever have to
mm,
talk negative about his dad to him because I was able to let him get to his own conclusion on what his relationship was going to be with his dad. And I didn't need to trash talk his dad because his dad was going to let him down all on his own. I didn't need to add any fuel to that fire. Now that doesn't mean I was perfect and he
mm,
didn't hear me talking smack about his dad like when I was in my bedroom on the phone with my friends. I'm sure that happened, you know. But we just try to be really open and honest about it. And when he was a teenager and started to explore, smoking weed and doing all the things that kids do, I was like, listen, do what you want. You're an adult now, but you need to look at this with responsibility. First and foremost, you have Crohn's disease. So your body metabolizes substances differently than other people. Second of all, you have two parents, in my opinion, that have the addict gene, right? So you're going to need to be very careful. And if you're able to consume alcohol or recreational drugs without consequences and they don't stop you from having a job and excelling at your job and achieving the things you want, my hat is off to you. Go and do those things. But I wasn't able to do that. And so we've just had those constant conversations. And but my son, when it comes to drinking, he can take it or leave it. It's just not. He's not that interested in it. He'll leave a half of a beer on the counter, and I'm always just like, "That's so wasteful. Why are you doing that?"
how
But
how are we
he's
related?
yeah, are we related? But he's also the kid that like he can get like a dessert and only eat part of the dessert and then just leave it on the table. Not me, even if I'm full, I've got to finish that dessert. So,
Yeah.
um, so he might not have it. Like he might, but or it might develop later on. I don't know what his journey will be, but all I can keep doing is just talking about mine pretty openly. Sometimes probably more openly than he would like, right? Because he does have a mom with a really big personality, and there's, there's another side of that that probably hasn't always been fun for him, but I do think that he's proud of me. And if I make a joke about, well, let's go out and have some drinks, and he was like, it's not funny, mom, and you're not going to, and I no, so yeah, it's been interesting. I haven't done it perfectly, but I've just tried to keep the conversations as authentic and unfiltered as appropriate for whatever his age was, throughout the period.
He sounds like a very cool kid. It sounds like you've done, despite incredible adverse consequences, that you've created this amazing young man. So he just sounds
He is great.
wonderful.
And you've done something. I don't mind when he's a jerk to me. I just want him to be really great to everybody else, And if as long as he's
Mm,
and that's what I always hear back from my friends. People like, "Oh, your son, he's just so well-mannered and he's got such great people skills and he's so thoughtful." And I'm like, "Okay, I've done something right. I've done something right." Right? So,
yeah. So before we end, I'm curious your take on like the sober scene, like the sober curator. Everyone check it out. It's very cool. If you're kind of our age range, even younger, you're gonna like it. It's got gravity, but it's also fun as well, and it's got some like rehab Barbie jewelry, all of that kind of stuff. How have you seen the kind of sober online space change? What's your take on this?
oh, this is a topic, Veronica, I could talk about for a while because I've got opinions on it.
Oh, good, good. We like
I
opinions.
got some opinions. Um, when I got sober, this makes me sound like an old lady. Back in my day, social media was just getting started. Like, I think I was on MySpace when I got sober, and it was a while before I got onto Facebook. Um, so the only thing I really had access to was 12-step meetings and the self-help section of the bookstore. Right. And there weren't all these options that there are now. There weren't all the podcasts. There weren't, the now there's, I mean, everybody has a book. Like there's so, and there's so many other pathways that are not just 12-step based. So there's a lot of different ways of getting sober. There's the whole non-alcoholic beverage movement, and people always ask me, how do you feel about that? Because we do have a section on the website where we do beer reviews and beverage reviews for non-alcoholic beverages. And I'm like, proceed with caution. I don't know, because I can have some of those products now and I don't find them triggering, but would I have found them triggering at 3 months? Maybe. I don't know. It wasn't an option for me, but I'm of the mindset that, if I can't look or be around alcohol, I've got a much bigger problem, right? Because it's everywhere in the world. So I've got to learn to be able to
Yeah,
navigate
yeah.
around it. And I did not recover out loud on the internet up until like I started the Sober Curator. So I've
Huh.
always been, well, not always. The first couple of years I would only tell people I was in recovery if it was like they absolutely had to know, or I wanted them to know because we might end up in a situation where that it was going to become an issue or whatever. As I gained confidence in my recovery, and especially learned that sharing my recovery would be helpful to other people, I was very open about it in person. So if it could be helpful to any conversation, I was fine with people knowing. But I certainly wasn't putting on Facebook. I certainly wasn't putting it on a T-shirt. Like I wasn't out in the world in that way. And so when I started paying attention to sober Instagram and sober TikTok and sober YouTube and all the podcasts, it's kind of started paying attention to all this content that was coming online. It was it was interesting. It was great. It was scary because I got to be honest with you. When I see someone who's got like 3 months or 6 months and they're like offering sober coaching services. I'm
Oh,
like,
please don't get
what
me started on
what
that.
do you think you
I know.
know? Like,
I know.
what do you think you know, you know? And I think so the sober curious movement, that's great. I don't have any problem with it, but for me and the way that I drank and used, it was going to be a life or death situation. And for many people, it is. And so I get really anxious when I see people online that were like, oopsies, had a little slip last night, but I don't need to restart my day count. I'm like, I don't understand that at all. Like,
Mm,
you know, but I also, I don't think like if you relapse that you've lost whatever time that you accrued because there's a value. I mean, you don't lose that time. You know, I actually have my sobriety date tattooed on my back. And somebody asked me once, are you nervous if you relapse that you have that date on your back? And I'm like, if I relapse, that date doesn't become less significant, right? I don't lose what happened that day or what happened after that day. It just might mean that there was more experience out there for me to get. But I just think there's a responsibility, right? And the other thing that I really struggle with is you don't see a lot of people in long-term recovery online, right? That are out there.
mm, yeah.
You don't. Well, you don't see a lot of people in long-term recovery period. Because it's hard. It's hard to do something that long
Mm,
consistently. Like I say this to, you know, people all the time like like try going without sugar for 15 years. Can you do it? That's, you know, I don't know if I could. uh but it's you know, um so I don't know, but I also I don't have the answers of what the right way should be. I just have to trust that everybody will find their way and their path. But I also I am nervous that if when I came on board, if there were as many options then as there are now, would I have gotten to where I needed to get fast enough? I don't know. You know, I don't know. But so um but I also think that but at the end of the day, I do think that the more people that are recovering out loud and chipping away at the stigma, I do think that's helpful, right? I do think that's helpful. Um, and that there's more people talking about it because more people talking about it mean hopefully more people will get help. And if more people get help, then in theory, more lives will be saved. Um,
yeah.
but that doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean that everybody's out there doing it for the right reasons. And I think there's a difference between being a person in recovery and performing recovery, and I'm saying that as somebody who
Mm,
used to perform recovery. You know, I would sit in church basements and I'd learned all the buzzwords and I knew how to be funny or I knew how to be sad. And I was faking a program. I made it look the part, but I was not really living an honest lifestyle. I hadn't really started having new, better behaviors. I was just faking it, right? And that only got me fake results. And I am a results oriented person, but I want the real results. And so you know, I don't know. There's a lot of good, there's a lot of not so good. And I try to
yeah.
bite my
I,
tongue a lot.
I'm the same. I feel it's more to the good that we have so much. This movement has become much more public through social media. I think that's great. I think that people documenting their journey is fantastic. And I just want to be very, very clear. Just because you've got sober and have 50,000 Instagram followers does not in any way, shape, or form qualify you to coach or work with somebody else to get sober. And
Yeah.
if you see people offering
Yeah.
services, it I've done this for over 20 years, and I have seen many, many, many people in the real world and online come and go. And the reason is people get sober, they see a business opportunity, they create the service,
Hmm.
they don't take care of their own sobriety, and they either drink again or their mental health suffers so much that they're
Hmm.
not able to be of help. You need to have some qualifications in this, and a minimum of at least a couple of years, not like a few weeks online doing something. So we're of the same mind. So and this is unregulated. You know, anybody
It
can
is
just
the
pop up on
wild,
Instagram.
wild
It's
west
the Wild
out there right
West.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah, and be
it's,
discern. I'm glad we agree on that. Be discerning. Check people. I always be when people reach out to me, I say, go and check me out. Listen to my stuff, read my book, and look at my qualifications that are on my website.
yeah, yeah. 100% I agree. And I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of people that have the big huge followings, right? Um and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, I don't want what they have,
Yeah.
and
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I don't want that big following. That's not it. And um a certain extent, while social media is great and it gives us a platform to share our stories which do connect us, um as addicts, alcoholics, whatever, substance abuse disorder, whatever you want to call it, like usually we have a lot of ego, right? And we're attention seeking, and that is just what social media is. Just it can encourage that in an unhealthy behavior. And I've seen a lot of unhealthy relationships online, and you
Yeah.
don't get to really know people online, and so I've met some amazing
Mm,
people around the world in recovery thanks to the global
yeah.
pandemic that I would have never met. But there's, I'm just, yeah, you do have to be discerning. You really do,
Yeah.
because sadly,
Yeah.
not everybody's telling you the truth, and not everybody has the right motives.
Yeah, absolutely. Elise, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being so honest about parenting and relationship with your son. I think so many of our listeners will really benefit from that. And I think you're really, that's a really inspiring story. I warmed to you the minute I met you. I loved your big personality, and I could imagine you drinking, and I can see how
Ooh,
limiting that would have been and how expansive you are now that you're sober, and clearly so much more fun. Can you tell everybody where they can find you and check out your stuff?
absolutely. You can check us out at thesobercurator.com. You're welcome to sign up for our email newsletter. That is something that I don't do consistently. I would like to get back to sending it out consistently, but we probably have new articles coming out, maybe 3 to 5 a week, of all different types of things. Whether you're looking, we've got sober horoscopes, book reviews, podcast reviews, merchandise, stories about people in recovery. And if there's something that you see that you don't see that you want, like, let us know. Or if you love creating content, maybe you love sober travel and you want to write about the places that you've traveled sober. I would love to be able to create a place where people can share their content and just kind of like collectively as a group make this really uber awesome resource for living a sober lifestyle that's fun.
Brilliant. Elise, thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest. It was great to meet you. Guys, go and check out the Super Curator. It's just fun. It's cool. I mean, you'll like it. Elise has some really good stuff on there. So please reach out. Let us know what you think of the episode. I'm on Instagram at Veronica J Valley, and on Facebook at Soberful. We would love to know what you got from this episode, particularly around some of the subjects that Elise touched on. And I will see you guys next week. Bye bye.